Hi everyone, we're still in Bangkok for another episode of Coffee Brewing with April, and I'm on the way up here to meet with Op and brew some coffee together. So welcome in. So we're inside, and it's time for us to brew some coffee, right? So first of all, we're gonna have like a little bit of look of a setup. We're gonna talk a little bit about the coffee. You obviously gonna share just what you're up to and what you're brewing. What are we doing right now?
We're doing right now. I'm still waiting for my water to reach about 93 degrees. And then for today's, we're brewing we're brewing the April, of course, the Kenya Wash SL 2834.
So I should say, that the reason why we're brewing this, I'll just steal it from you. So the reason that we're brewing this is because we realized that you basically have the freezer full of vacuum sealed frozen coffee, which in the world of coffee is like a fairly fancy thing to do. So I got really curious and really wanted to kind of know more. How long have you been vacuum sealing and freezing coffee at home?
Well, since the pandemic, I brew a lot of coffee and I could not finish like the whole beans within 2 months or so. So my friend suggested that I should get in a vacuum seal and just freeze it, and you can just like brew it 10 months later, even a year later, or even this one. This one is about like 6 to 5 months, I think.
Okay, so we're actually brewing coffee that are 6 months old, right? Which this is actually really cool, right? And I think a lot of homebrewers has a similar challenge where they just have too much coffee.
Yeah.
Because you want to try coffee from kind of everyone. Yes. I think it's really interesting and super excited to also try this today, right? So we have, before we talk about the doughs and everything, right? So we have coffee beans, they're frozen. We obviously have to grind them. I see you have a comandante.
Yes.
Is this like the first grinder you got yourself, or you've been trying a lot of different grinders?
I've been trying a few, and since the pandemic, of course, I took the comandante here. The price is quite expensive, but since I brew a lot of coffee and my main focus is just to get like the taste and the aroma from the beans as much as possible. So yeah, I took the plunge and buy the comandante, and it did not disappoint me at all. Like for 2 years.
Super cool. Yeah, so it's been like your go-to pretty much. Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
And here, so we're doing, I'm assuming because it says 15 grams on this vacuum pack, we're going to brew 15 grams of coffee.
Yes.
To how much water?
225.
225, okay.
Well, the brew would separate the pouring into three pours, and shall we start?
Let's do it. Okay. First of all, with the grinder, what amount of clicks are you using?
I'm using since this one has been sitting in the freezer for like 6 months now, so my setting is more towards finer grind.
Okay.
About 27 clicks, and for the water, and the temp is around like 92 to 93. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Let's start by grinding as well. I'm gonna keep my hands off and let you do your things.
Yeah, sure. Excuse me, I have to get the. I forgot to.
Yeah, for sure.
Get the scissors.
Easy. So have you tried like a different? It's interesting when, and I've heard this like quite a few times now in this series, where people, when you have an older coffee, even though it's frozen, then people tend to actually grind finer as the coffee is getting older, right? And you feel that it's because you're losing a little bit of flavor, a little bit of intensity as it gets older, or?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit, because with times, the coffee degassing more and more. So so at the end, the best method for me to keep the beans for as long as I can is just vacuum seal and freeze them.
Yeah, super cool.
So right now I'm just rinsing
The paper filter, which is also a debate these days. People talk about rinsing versus not rinsing.
Yeah.
But you're rinsing.
Yeah.
I rinse as well, just for the record. You said, like, off camera, you said that one of your favorite things with April Brewer was the paper filter. Do you want to...
Well, I'm not going to name names, but
Okay, sure.
before I used to use like a wave style.
Filter.
Yeah, different brand. And it did not deliver the result as well as this one, to be honest, because
That's cool, though.
it kind of has more like a papery like smell. Pretty pungent, actually.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard when brewing coffee, even though you pour in like 100 mils of water to rinse the paper. But this one hasn't like troubles me at all. Yeah.
Very true, though. And that's something that we actually worked a lot on because we don't want the coffee to taste like paper.
Yeah.
So 27 clinks, 15 mils of coffee.
27.
So I think a lot of people would say that 27 is relatively coarse.
Coarse?
Kind of.
Well, some of my friends said it's fine.
Yeah.
But it depends. 27 works for me best because I find, I'm not sure because of how I brew or the weight of my hand during like pouring is like too much. So I think 27 is works for me.
Yeah. Do you often change grind size based on the coffee you're brewing, or do you, like, if you have this recipe, you're always using 27?
It depends, and also it depends on the process of the coffee as well.
Okay.
Because this one is a washed coffee. 27 is, well, the filter is, sorry, the brew is like a percolation, what's it called again? Immersion, yeah. It's like a cross between immersion and percolation. 27, I think it sits fine, and it delivers like the taste, the flavor very well. Yeah. And it didn't take up like that amount of time to brew as well. Most of the time I get around like 2 minutes. Yep. 2 minutes and 15 seconds, like maximum.
Okay, so on the like faster side of things.
Yeah.
But I think that's also really nice, and I think that's actually linked to another variable here that we haven't talked about yet. The water. Because you're brewing with a quite interesting water, I've realized, right?
Yeah.
Water is always going to be like a big challenge in any kind of home brewing setup, in any coffee shop setup as well, really. And what a lot of homebrewers do is that they use some kind of bottled water, right? That's quite common. Or some kind of mineral pack where they're adding different minerals, right? But you are using a realizer water with a very, very low TDS, right? Yeah. Do you want to tell me a little bit about that?
Well, the brand, no.
Yeah, but like everything, really. Like, how did you, like, first of all, what is the actual TDS that you're using in the water?
Well, before this one, I use another brand, which is also has a very low TDS. It's around like 7 or 8. Yeah. And since then, some of my friends, they suggest that this brand, I think, they think that this brand can deliver, like in terms of the taste and everything from the coffee, can like get everything out of the beans like better. Okay. So yeah, that's when I start like changing to this one, which is has a lower TDS, and because
this is even 6, right? So you moved basically from like 8, 9 to like 6.
To like 6. Yeah. And sometimes I want to like squeeze the flavor and everything more than it already does, I would just put like some mineral water in a ratio around like 10% from the 100%.
To actually add in. Yeah. Ah, that's cool. We had a comment on one of our videos in the series as well, which I thought was really smart, and I never thought about it, is that because we talk a lot about taking demineralized or distilled water and adding minerals, but then there's one guy say you can just save on minerals by taking distilled water and mixing it with your tap water. Yeah. Which, depending on where you are in the world, may not be a smart thing to do. Yeah. But it's still interesting, right? There's a lot you can do just mixing kind of two different styles of water.
Yeah.
I need to ask you then. So, are you experienced with brewing coffee with water of like let's say 50 TDS or 100? And what do you feel is the main difference?
The main difference would be in terms of the flavor it delivers is more harsh, and I cannot detect the aroma at all. And because different brands has their own like TDS, correct? Sure. Yeah. So now that I found like really soft water, I'm sick. You're
not gonna go back.
I'm not gonna go back.
You're stuck with the soft water. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Cool. So we're brewing now, right? When we're talking 15 grams of coffee.
Yes.
You said 225 grams of water.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
93 degrees Celsius water.
Yes.
So why do we have 92, 93? What's the pitch?
Well, it's like a sweet sweet spot for me. Well, I used to when I do like a lower temperature, sometimes I feel that I might under extract the coffee, and if I go like higher, 95, 96, I found that more times that I kind of over extract the coffee. So 92, 93 is like a sweet spot for me. Yep. And when you pour like into second pour and third pour or even fourth pour, the temperature would drops.
Sure.
So it kind of correlates with the with how you pour the coffee.
Yeah.
Because my first pour usually would be more turbulent style, and the second and third would be more milder as it goes.
Okay.
Until the final.
Awesome. Just show us how it's done.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So the first pour, since the coffee is around 15 grams, I'm gonna do 45 to 50, counterclockwise. Yep. Within 10 seconds.
10 seconds.
And I'm just gonna let it brew, because I get this idea from like brewing tea leaves, where they do like a really aggressive pour to the leaves just to get everything out first, to wax it up. And to my mind, I think that's kind of makes sense. So I did the same with the coffee. For this,
and you let that sit for how long?
For 40 seconds.
Okay.
Yeah. And for the second pour, I'm gonna pour around 110. Which gonna makes it into like 160.
160. Okay, so we go 55 up to 160. How fast did you pour this? Like, is that also important? The timing of this pour?
The time. Yes, of course. I think it's around, since this one has a measure where how aggressive you pour.
Yeah.
It's around like 4 to 5 grams per second.
Okay. Yeah.
For this final
pour.
pour.
125. That's the final pour.
Yeah, that's the final pour. When I reach like 200, I would go in the middle.
Yeah.
And as closely and as like gentle as I can. So everything could draw down like nicely and evenly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So around 140, the pouring is done pretty much,
yes.
right? And then we're just waiting for this. And then you're looking at brew times that are like fairly on the quick side.
Yes.
Almost always. Yeah.
Yes.
Super cool. This is actually really interesting. So it's a Time Morse scale, right?
Yes.
Which I've seen quite a lot here, which is really cool. And it actually displays, which I haven't really thought about, and that's my bad because I haven't really used it. It actually shows grams per second,
yes.
which is actually really cool.
Yes.
I never thought about that. It's very important. So that's one of the like tips as a home brewer. I think that you should definitely, like, first of all, you need to pour the right amount. Then you have to look at how much are you actually pouring per second, because that makes a big difference. And so 230 and everything kind of gone out. 240.
And
awesome. I'm super curious. So basically, again, then what we have here is a 6-month-old coffee that's been vacuum sealed and frozen. How far then from roast would you vacuum seal and freeze it?
How far?
Like how long will you let it? Yeah. So like how would you how long will you let it rest before you put it into a vacuum bag?
Well, I usually do the vacuum seal after the beans reach its peak, like after it degas for a while, like 3 to 4 weeks.
So 3 to 4 weeks.
Yeah,
Okay.
the aroma would be at its fullest. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it will be.
Excuse me. Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense. Like what it does is that resting the coffee, especially, we talk a lot about this. The lighter the coffee is roasted, the longer it needs to be rested.
Yes.
Because it's harder for the CO2 in the coffee to leave the beans, right? The darker the roasted the coffee, the quicker that happens.
Yes.
So it makes a lot of sense to have, when you have a lighter roasted coffee, to wait for like 3-4 weeks. That's what we would do as well, right?
Yeah.
And then if you were vacuum sealing coffee after, let's say 1 week, you would trap a lot of those gases.
Yes.
So even if you open it up 6 months later, it would still taste quite gassy,
Yes.
right? Yeah. Cool. Let's try it. I'm super curious about this.
Okay.
Go for it.
I'm quite nervous actually.
No, don't be. So again, so 6-month-old vacuum frozen coffee brewed with what is the ratio then? Basically
I think 150,
ish. 1 to 16.
1 to 16.
We'll figure that out and we'll write it somewhere. But 15 grams of coffee to 225 grams of
Yes.
water. Brewed with water at a mineral content of 6 TDS, which is
Yes.
quite
Quite low.
unusual, I think, which is really interesting. Awesome. Let's taste and just see. Let's talk a little bit about what we're tasting,
Yeah.
right? What are you getting?
I'm getting very like tomatoey, like a fresh tomato, like cherry
Sure.
tomatoes.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing for you?
Oh, of course, it's a good thing
That's a good thing,
because for my personal taste, I really love Kenyan
Yeah.
wash, especially.
Yeah.
And after 6 months after frozen in the freezer and vacuum seal and everything, and it still has the same taste and notes as I got from like when I first opened the bag. It's still like
I mean, it's still distinctly Kenyan. Like there's
Yes.
no doubting it. Like this is a Kenyan coffee,
Yes.
right? And I think the quality measurement of any brewer anywhere is like, can you make it taste like the origin, right? That's like step one. That's very important, right? Then after that, you're looking at flavor complexity. You're looking at mouthfeel and texture, right?
Yeah.
I think the aroma here is really nice. It's definitely a little bit like cherry vibe, almost like tomato-ish vibe. But again, kind of in a good way. Usually when we say tomato and Kenyan coffee, that's like a very bad thing. But it also depends on, tomatoes can taste in a lot of different ways. For me, it has this kind of quite red apple-y vibe to it, which is more of maybe a Scandinavian flavor reference, which I think is really nice. It's actually an incredibly juicy cup of coffee,
Wow.
which is really cool. Like the mouthfeel is really nice, but because the thing is for me, when I hear that you use 6 TDS water, on my experience, the first thing I go, oh, it's just gonna taste super flat. It's gonna be really empty.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of my experience of a very, very low TDS water, which this would be. But it's actually quite flavor intense. And it's super juicy and like well textured,
Yeah. Thank you.
which is kind of cool actually. That's super cool.
Thank you. I think it's probably because the water here, I mean, the fresh water and everything is kind of harsh. It has more like a harsh water. So the lower the TDS makes up for when you're brewing the coffee better. Even though like some households they use like water filter at home, install at home, I still feel like you would still have to adjust the filter, and whenever there like any dirt stuck on the filter, you still have to like change up and everything. And in terms of like buying just like bottled water, you know that you're gonna get like good results every time.
Yeah, that's something we have like more and more people are starting to say, right? Like homebrewers, it's like buy bottled water. It's a bit more affordable also. it's consistent as
Yeah.
well, which makes a lot of sense from a brewing perspective, right? Yeah.
Even though it's not like environmental friendly that much, but still we like most of the bottled waters are recycled anyway. Can be recycled. Yeah.
Now I need to ask before we kind of wrap this up. Like this, it seems like you clearly have a visual thing going on here in terms of your coffee equipment. It's a trend here, right? Meaning that it's like a black Commandante, black April Brewer. Also, then with the choice of the April Brewer, I guess you choose this one because of the color, more so than like porcelain or glass or like other materials. It was
When April firstly released the glass and the porcelain one back like a couple of years ago, I thought about getting those, but the shipment from Denmark to Thailand, I'm not so sure because you wouldn't know like how people handle the stuff. I'm so afraid that when I open the package, it would go like bright and everything, so I didn't order those one. So now that we have like a distributor of April dripper here, I decided to like, of course, I'm just gonna go with the plastic one and black one because I'm a bit clumsy, so it would be a good choice.
you don't want to break it,
Yeah, I don't want to.
Which, to be fair, is also something we hear a lot about, right? Because plastic doesn't break in the same way, which makes a little bit difference.
Yeah.
Awesome. I think with that, we're gonna do a little bit of wrap up, and thank you very much for having us. Yeah.
Thank you.
So with that, we want to say thank you for watching. As always, this is another video in the series of homebrewing with April, which is really interesting. This time we're in Bangkok. And as always, if you want to follow us, subscribe, that's always very appreciated. If you have any comments, any thoughts on this style of brewing that we just walk you through, you're more than welcome to just fill that in below. As always, Patreon is where you go to know where I'm going next. That's where we do the conversations. It's where we have all the behind the scene clips, all the kind of nitty gritty stuff that is really interesting to know, right? So with this, we just want to thank you for watching and have a great day. We want to give a special thank you to all of our Patreon supporters. It's because of you that we are able to continue to make these videos. And we want you all to feel free to always come with suggestions and ideas on the content that you want to see, because we are doing this for you and because of you. Thank you from all of us here at April.